and Aghogho Oboh.
It's 3 minutes past 5. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. Whenever you hear the 5 p.m. news, you're ready to receive today's big hard fact. So from now until 6, let's dive deep into transportation in Lagos State. That's a theme that has run across today. We were inspired, of course, by the recent restrictions on two-wheeled and three-wheeled public transportation on major roads in some local government areas in Lagos. Now, we've seen a lot of reaction to the decision this month, some in favor, some against, and earlier today on the Big Three, you heard me talk to Occupy Lagos, a group that protested against the ban at the Lagos Marathon this weekend. But the more we talk about this ban, or the restriction, whichever you prefer to call it, the more I realize that it is just the tip of the iceberg. I listen to your calls, I read your messages, and like I said, there is a lot of disagreement about the merits or demerits of this policy. And I've been studying your responses. I realize the reason Lagosians cannot seem to agree on this policy is that Lagosians do not have a clear picture of how our transportation system should work. We really should not be discussing issues like this, keke and bike restriction, without first discussing the wider problems of mass transportation and traffic in Lagos, and what a proper solution for these problems would look like. It's only after we've had that conversation that we can then look at this ban and decide objectively whether it is productive or not. Now, according to the Lagos State Transportation Ministry, in 2016, the lag bus system moved 29,172 Lagosians a day in a city of over 20 million people. That's today's big hard fact. According to the Lagos State Transportation Ministry, in 2016, the lag bus system moved 29,172 Lagosians a day in a city of over 20 million. That's less than 1% of the population being moved by public buses. Let that sink in. And you and I are not alone in this conversation, by the way. Joining us to break down these issues is a public policy expert who spent over a decade in policy, specifically monitoring and evaluation, before joining the corporate world as a venture capital executive. Chief Andy Oboh, thank you for joining us again on the show.
Thanks for having me, Sandra.
You heard today's big hard fact, Chief Oboh. Is it normal that in a city of over 20 million people, the public bus system can only move 29,000 people?
It's absolutely not normal, Sandra. Like you said, it's less than 1% of the population, and by any measurement, that's unacceptable. Especially in a city like Lagos that doesn't have real transport. Normally you have other cities like the big ones. You talk with cities like New York or London, and they have a rail system, either overground or underground, that absorbs most of the traffic volume, of people who need to commute. But when you don't have that, if you don't have a rail system for whatever reason, then you need to invest heavily in buses to move people. And so, excuse me, even with a rail system, there's a ratio. We normally look at these things in terms of ratios, like how many people are being moved. So even with a rail system in place, the idea is that the bus system supplementing the rail should be able to carry something along the lines of there should be one bus for about 1,000 people. And if you look at that, in a city of 20 million, 25 million, like Lagos is, that means that even if we had a rail system, we should be talking about something like around 25,000 buses. But obviously, we don't have that right now. So definitely, we're not even come close to being enough. And then, apart from the sheer volume of buses, there's also the problem of bus penetration. Now, that simply means that how far do you have to go to get to one of these Lagos official buses? So and that comes down to how many bus stops do you have, how many routes do you have, and then according to the Lagos Transportation Ministry, we have 53 routes or something like that right now of buses. So maybe it's a bit more now. So maybe let's just say for the sake of argument, you have 70 bus routes right now. That's still not acceptable for a city of the size of Lagos. You need about 1,000 bus routes at this point. But so we're still far lower than what we should have. Then of course the number of bus stops is a function of the number of routes. So when you have 50 bus routes, like we do now, 53 or so, you end up with about 600 and something bus stops, which is just nowhere close to what we should be having in Lagos. Lagos should be having something along the lines of like 40,000 bus stops at this point. So definitely the public bus system in Lagos is nowhere close to meeting
the needs of Lagos. Because it's interesting, you mentioned all these cities. I'm looking at a city like London with 9 million people, and I know that the trains are carrying about 6 million people per day. They've got over 500 trains carrying 6 million people per day. They've got almost 9,000 buses carrying 6 million people daily as well.
Right.
They've got 700 bus routes. They've got 19,000 bus stops. And Lagos at 21 million people. Well, it depends on who is giving you the numbers, really. So some people tell you 19 million, 20 million, 21 million. But let's say over 20 million people.
Right.
And it's 674 BRT buses, 48 bus stops, 53 bus routes, 65 buses that are carrying 35 passengers daily, one bus carrying 538 passengers daily, and you have a city that is over 20 million. So it's like you said, for this to begin to make sense, to begin to move at least 1 million Lagosians daily, we need at least 1,858 buses, at least. And to move 10 million, we need over 18,000 buses because we don't have trains yet. Let's not get started on the Blue Rail and all of that.
Exactly. And so when I hear people talk about, hey, we shouldn't worry, 500 buses are on the way, you've just done the math for us, Sandra. I mean, we need 18,000 buses at least. So that number of that 500 buses that they say are coming, you have to multiply that by 32. You need 36. Sorry, you need 36 times that shipment of buses before we can start talking about, we maybe have enough buses to run Lagos.
Okay, so we can all agree that the state hasn't put enough buses on the road and that private alternatives are needed. But some people will ask, must that alternative be bikes and kekes? After all, we have also seen danfos, we've seen taxi cabs. Why can't we say, ban kekes and okadas and use danfos and taxis instead?
Okay. In public policy, especially public policy in the developing world, we're a poorer nation, there is a maxim, a rule, sort of like a guideline that you are trained to use. When I was being trained, it was drummed into our head that you should treat things like a doctor, not like a surgeon. That is, you don't amputate before you fully understand. So you don't cut something out before you've identified what problem is this thing solving, this thing I'm about to cut out. It's here because it's solving a problem. Now, it may not be solving the problem in the right way, or it may be, while solving that problem, causing another problem. All these things are true. But I shall know that this thing exists and is being used by people because it's solving a particular problem or set of problems. So the first thing that I, as a public policy expert or public policy official, needs to do is identify what problem is this thing solving. Now, once I know the problem, I ask myself the second question: do I have another solution for this problem? Then, if I have that solution, I now implement that solution while gradually removing the other thing, the first thing that was causing that first solution I didn't like. But if I don't have an immediate solution to the problem, and I have to ask myself the second question: if I remove this thing that is solving a problem but causing another one, that problem is solving that will now be unsolved. What are the consequences of it? And can my society bear it? So you see, especially because what happens a lot of the time is that solutions like this arise because people need it. We didn't just, Nigerians or Lagosians didn't just wake up one day and said, look, you know what? I want to live dangerously. This mall where I'm entering is not hungry me anymore. I wish somebody would bring motorcycle for me to ride and go around and go to places.
So we have Okadas on the roads because for a private investor, it doesn't make sense to put a danfo or bus or taxi on an inner road because you're not going to get enough money to pay for your vehicle.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
That's something that you policy guys call a last mile problem, yeah? Yes,
and that's what I was getting to. In Lagos pretty much developed without solving the last mile problem. The last mile problem is, how do I get from my house to the public transportation system? And then how do I, at the end of the day, get from the public transportation system back to my house? Now, the problem is, if your bus stop is very far from you, or if you're living in an internal road that the bus cannot enter, the last mile problem becomes very serious. And we had a situation in Lagos where Lagos was growing, and like we said, you see the number of bus stops, like less than 1,000 bus stops for a city this big. It's not obtainable. So people look for a solution. Now, normally in other places, in other towns, like for instance, a place like Port Harcourt where I've lived, the solution there is to put taxis on the road. So you see private people putting taxis to run in the places that the buses are not entering. But now, like you were saying, to put a taxi on the road, you have to buy the taxi and put it. Now, as you bought the taxi, you're expecting to get returns. And if those returns are too small, recouping your expense on the taxi becomes difficult and it takes long. Now, if you're running your taxi on a small road, it will take you an insane amount of time to make your money back. So in that situation, people who have money, instead of buying a taxi, will buy a bike and put that bike on the road and let it solve the last mile problem. And by the way, it also solves the last mile problem beautifully because it's faster than a car. It gets there, it drops the person, it goes back. It will run many routes. Before you know, the operator has made back his or her money. So that's why Okada stepped in to solve the last mile problem. Same thing with Keke. And, and that's because government left that space empty. Government did not put enough bus stops to make people feel like, you know what, it's not a big deal for me to walk to the bus stop. If that was the case, there were enough bus stops and enough buses servicing the bus stop. So you know that you only need to wait 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Nobody will climb the bike.
Yeah, but
and by the way,
go ahead.
Let me just also point out, by the way, that government themselves saw the last mile problem. That was at the tail end of the military era. Government saw that there was a last mile problem in transport and decided to solve it by bringing Keke. That's why we talk about Keke Marwa, because that's named after Marwa, the former military governor of Lagos State. In other parts of the country, we talk about Keke Napep, because during the Obasanjo era and slightly afterwards, Napep, the agency for preventing and fighting poverty, was distributing these tricycles. So that means these tricycles were part of a government solution to the last mile problem.
Okay.
Now,
okay. But if Okada and Keke are right now the only viable private solution for the last mile problem, hasn't government done the right thing by restricting them to inner roads? Don't forget that it's 5 local governments that this has happened in. There's 20 local governments in Lagos?
Yes.
Hasn't the government done the right thing by restricting them to inner roads?
Well, clearly, in the sense that if government is simply saying, look, motorcycles, Okadas don't have any business on the highway. Keke has no business on the highway. It's a hazard. Remove them from the highway, and you can move on the inner road, and you're solving our last mile problem for us there. I think that's a perfectly reasonable idea. Giving one or two asterisks that I want to come to. Asterisk number one is that right now, the kekes and the Okadas on the major roads are also solving a problem there. Now, you remove them from there, you have the solution for that problem on the major roads. So that's the first question.
What problem are they solving on the major roads?
Okay, so I'll come to that in more detail, because that's what they're solving there is congestion.
Okay.
But now, the second asterisk there is, okay, you've said remove them from the major roads, let them only fly the inner roads. Are your police officers and your VIS officers and your LASMA officers, are they sticking to that policy, or have they taken this as a green light to have a field day with Okadas and Kekes and to harass them even on the inner roads, which is what we hear is happening, and which happens a lot actually in Nigeria generally, and Lagos in particular. So when you decide to embark on a policy like this and say, you know what, it's not a total ban, it's just a restriction, you have to first do a lot of sensitization, and you also have to have a lot of oversight on the enforcement arm so that they don't go overboard and turn it into a situation where they are extorting people, because that's what's happening. In some places, Okadas and Kekes have been kicked off the inner road and they are being extorted. I was listening to earlier on, and it's still happening. So yes, in that sense, the restriction is good, but it's the restriction only on paper. Is it actually being enforced as a ban, a total ban? And what is government doing to make sure that it's not being abused?
Now let's come back to that point about congestion that you mentioned, because apart from the last mile problem, the second reason why we see Okadas and Kekes on the roads is congestion. We see them on major roads as an alternative to cars, which get stuck in traffic. So what are the implications of taking them off the major roads before providing a solution to congestion?
Well, we'll stay in traffic longer. Simply put, is that there will be more cars on the road and more cars doing more work on the road, because nature abhors a vacuum and traffic also abhors a vacuum. So if it's taking the Okadas and Kekes that we're carrying with you, because let's just say it's even 100,000 people that in the affected areas are being moved by Okadas and Keke in the major roads. But it's far more. But let's just say it's even 100,000 people. Those 100,000 people will now have to enter cars. And now that's so you have enough cars to carry 100,000 people a day being added to the traffic in those places. That's already a big problem.
Now, what's the solution to the congestion? What's causing the congestion? What's the solution to the congestion?
Well, anytime I'm stuck in traffic on Lekki Expressway, like the first thought that always comes to my mind is, why is there only one road all the way from Shango to Edo, all the way to the Lekki Expressway gate? Like, the idea that every human being who lives in Lekki and Lekki 2 and Aja and everywhere beyond there, the only way they can connect back to the rest of Lagos, unless they don't want to go to Ibadan or somewhere like that, is to come through the Lekki Expressway. Now, somebody will call in and say, well, no, there's also an alternative route. So, two routes. Now, you see, that's part of the problem we have. Our road network is not big enough, penetrative enough, wide enough to handle the growth of Lagos over the last couple of decades. So we've been building, more people have been coming into Lagos. Lagos is growing, and that's a good thing. People always say, the problem is too many people are in Lagos. Why are they all coming here? Hey, guess what? There are more people in New York. There are more people there are much larger cities in the world. And those cities are able to handle the problem simply because their road network, their rail networks have all grown along with it.
Yeah, but some people will tell you that we're not New York or London. These people have had centuries to plan for these things. We're new.
Well, the advantage of not having to do this for centuries, that you get to copy the work of those who went before you. This thing is, these things are not hidden, Sandra. Like, I don't understand why we decided that since it took New York 250 years to become New York, we too must take 250 years. When all we needed to do is copy New York's homework. The same Nigerians who are very good at exam malpractice, when it comes to development, suddenly we don't know how to do copy and paste anymore.
Yeah, but back to the point you were making about the solutions to our congestion problem.
Yeah, so the problem is more people in a neighborhood trying to enter a road. Over time, it's bound to cause congestion. Now, okay, so I'm sure most of your listeners are football fans. And you know that if in football, if you're defending, you're trying to deny the other team space. If you're attacking, you're trying to create space for yourself. Traffic is like football. It's all about space. Now, the road is where you have space. Now, you want to attack. You want to move the ball forward. You want to move the ball out of your neighborhood. The idea is to create space, open the space up. How do you open the space? You make sure that people who are going on a long journey, a long distance, are not having to pass through the same road as people going on a short journey. You try your best to separate out your traffic as much as possible. So that's why you have airports linking towns together, so that people who are going far don't have to go on the road. Then within a city, what you do is you have rail network, so that if I'm going from the island to mainland, I'm going from Lekki to Badagry, all these other things, I don't need to enter the road network with you that is simply going from, from Admiralty Way to Etimian. Instead, I enter a train that bypasses all the traffic and takes me right to that far place. Then, for those of you who are in a medium level journey, you are now using you're still using the road. Now, what you try to do is you segregate road users. You try as much as possible to get as many of them into what you call, high occupancy vehicles as possible. You start with heavy transit like buses. You need more buses to take the people who will go on the train. Then, beyond buses, you try and incentivize people to carpool. So you now create extra lanes for carpool lanes and all of that, forcing people or making people say, you know what, it's faster for me if I share a ride with Sandra and Aghogho and Chukudi instead of just driving by myself.
Yeah, but
what
are the security problems with that particular one? I love the first few ideas, but carpooling sounds like a recipe for disaster.
No, carpooling is something that all over the world, what happens is people carpool with people they know.
I see.
So, like, for instance, now you know your neighbors. Now, you and your neighbors know that all of you are going to VI to work.
Do I know my neighbors? What if they plan for me and get me kidnapped or something?
Who, your neighbors or your village people? Well, Sandra, you need better neighbors.
Okay, so carpooling, we know, are homegrown solutions, right? So they're kind of like Okada and Keke, because smaller cars, they can move through small gaps in traffic, they can avoid traffic jam, and the more commuters who can get from car to bike, the more you can switch from car to all of those ones are the better, eh?
Yes, you can get people, like, that's why people are going on bikes, because once people leave the cars and use the bikes, there are fewer cars on the road, more bikes that can flow through traffic. Traffic eases up.
Okay. All right. Let's continue this conversation with you who's listening at home. 01277 0993, 01277 2993, 01277 3993, as well as 01277 0993. I'm not sure if I mentioned that earlier. So there's 0993 1993, 2993, and 3993. And you can share your thoughts via WhatsApp as well. WhatsApp is 080 959 75805. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. This is Hard Facts, and we're looking at solutions. We're looking at the bigger conversation about transportation in a city like Lagos.
Hard Facts will be right back. Welcome back to Hard Facts.
Here we are, 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 01277 2993, and 01277 3993. Hello to you. Thanks for calling.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Welcome. Go ahead.
The man who is just speaking there, my name is Precious.
Precious, go ahead. Precious, you need to turn your radio off.
No, it's off. I'm on the road.
Precious, the hallback is too bad. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, welcome.
Yes, I'm Michael from Ikeja.
Michael, turn your radio off. Go ahead.
Yes. Please, I want to plead with the governor of this state that he should please hear the cry of the masses about transportation. Now, Okada is off the road. Marwa is off the road. We cannot find Uber. We cannot find Taxify. What is going on? Do they want us to leave the state for them? They should please do something about this. Someone told me that at the Taxify office, both, they said they have operator license. Another driver was telling me that the government said they should go and look for operator license. And they have been asked who is giving the operator license. They don't know who is giving operator license. Everything is just down. Today, you should go out and people trekking and things are just going upward. Somebody should please tell this government here, they should help us.
Well, the government is listening.
The Uber and the app drivers, they should bring all of them together on track and solve this issue once and for all, for the masses' sake.
All right, thanks for calling us. The government is listening. That's the great part. Hello.
Yeah, good evening, Sandra. How
Good
are
evening.
you?
Very well. How are you, sir?
Fine. Henry is my name. I'm calling from Erie.
Go ahead.
Now, you see, our people know what to do, but they don't want to do it. Now, let me tell you something. In 1983, I went to Zurich. Zurich is just like Lagos, you know. I went to Zurich, and I counted 16 tracks of railway in their station. By 1989, I went back to Zurich, and they were constructing another 16 tracks underground, same place. You know, and Switzerland has more oil. We have oil. I don't know why our people cannot construct rails, you know, from Lagos to so many parts of this country. We are building one to Ibadan and we are celebrating it. Now, within the city itself, like Lagos City, you know, they have what we call tram. The tram, you know, four coaches that shuttle, you know, within the city that carries all this stuff. Now, we come back to Lagos. We ban Okada. I am in support of the ban.
Okay.
In fact, my children are even part of those people suffering right now because we have to go from the inner road to the main road to get to work.
Okay.
And they cannot nowadays, so we have to walk. And they leave the house by 5:30. Now, when you go to the main road, you get a bus. But how do you get to the main road from the inner road? We have smaller buses. I know we have smaller buses of about 7 passengers. Why can't they organize these small buses to be running the inner roads to the main road?
Yeah, these small buses are usually owned by private citizens, and there's a case to be made about profitability for the private citizen who owns the bus.
Yes, no. But we can organize
how much turnover will they make? How much turnover will they make running an inner road?
7 people for 50 naira is 350. These same small buses are running, for instance, from Erie to Ikotu.
Okay.
They are doing that. I see them. I enter them.
Are they collecting 15 naira from Erie?
No, from Ikotu, from Erie to Ikotu is 100 naira.
Okay.
But in between, the halfway there is 50 naira.
Okay.
So they can just shuttle within the inner road
roads
and bring people out to the main road. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
You're saying.
And our people should try and put the electricity working so that we can have tram in Lagos and other big cities in Nigeria.
Thanks for calling me, sir. Chief Oboh, what do you say to that?
Yes. now he brings up the, like the 7-seater buses, these very small microbuses.
Mm-hmm.
And they are something that in other societies, in other cities, they have been experimented with as a last mile solution.
Okay.
Now, he has given us some numbers, for instance. Now, it will have to be, somebody will have to sit down. Now, the way this kind of thing will normally work is that before you ban Okadas, before you ban Kekes, somebody in the Lagos State Ministry of Transportation will sit down and do the business case and calculate in the cost of operating on those routes with a microbus and the revenue that they can expect to generate. And we'll now even present that to the private sector and say, look, it's profitable to run microbuses here. Why don't you come in? Look, by the way, we are planning on banning Okadas and Kekes in 6 months' time or in 1 year's time. So we want us to transition to a safer mode of transport, which is the microbus. So now that even gives an opportunity to people who are invested in Okada and Keke to go and get microbuses. Or people like you who may not have a Keke and Okada now, but you say, you know what, I'm interested in that microbus idea. Let me come and buy into it. And then that way the transition is smooth without your callers' children having to trek from the inner road to the outer road to get a bus. But then again, like I said, it has to start with that business analysis, because we are all just talking here on radio. Nobody has done the analysis to determine whether it is profitable to run those microbuses on those roads.
Now, beyond traffic, Chief Oboh, there's security. Government is saying that these bikes are used for crimes, right? Like robbery, kidnapping. Isn't this a valid concern? How else should they address this issue?
Okay. Well, machete is used to kill people, so we should ban machete. No more cutting of grass with machete. Cars are also the number one cause of fatalities on the road, so let us ban cars. You see where I'm going with this. It's not enough to say, there are lots of accidents with this. Yes, it's a public safety issue. I agree 100% that there is a public safety issue there. By the way, the number of fatalities from bikes has reduced since the introduction of the helmet law. The Lagos State, the University of Lagos Teaching Hospital actually has the scientific publication on that came out coincidentally January of this year. Studying over the years the number of fatalities from bikes, and bikes as a percentage contributor to fatalities in Lagos has reduced dramatically since the helmet law. The highest cause by far is motor vehicles, chiefly commercial motor vehicles. So I'm wondering whether we're going to ban taxis next, if that's the solution. If that's not the solution. The solution is more robust law enforcement. The reason why people talk about, they say that, you see some Okada men, they are driving one way. They're able to do that because the laws are not being enforced. They're able to do that because LASMA, DIS, police, and all these other agencies who have been given full powers of law to make sure that there's sanity on our roads are simply not doing a good enough job. But you see, this is what always happens in Nigeria. What happens in Nigeria is government does not do job A, so people end up doing activity B, and then government comes in to ban activity B, instead of just doing job A to begin with. So if we had a better transportation system provided by government, we wouldn't have these Okadas in the first place. Now, so they're saying Okadas are dangerous, but if government were doing its job and policing the roads properly in the second place, we wouldn't be having these problems with the Okadas. So each step of the way, what we see is that the fault is with government. The other, apart from safety, they also talk about crime. That is, they say, like you said, there's high level of crime incidents, people are using it and they're going to their kidnapping. They even say so much as that, people are pretending to be Okada men and they're actually criminals and all of that. But again, that leads me to my next question. What has government done to verify the identities of not just Okada riders, but any driver on the road? How robust is government's identity management system? We've had a visa ban, and the United States has banned us from having visas because they faulted the Nigerian government's inability to properly verify and manage identities of Nigerians. And that's the same, so that's why we're being punished by visa ban abroad. But it's the same problem that we're seeing here on the street. By right, the government should be embarrassed to say that a particular group of people in a particular profession, crime is rampant among them. Then what is your role as government? You even know the profession that they are conducting. You should be able to infiltrate them and identify who is the criminal element, because you're not going to tell me that it's up to even 10% of Okada riders that are committing this crime.
It isn't better to just stop them from being on the roads and, being able to commit these crimes.
Okay, so if we now find out that there is a small percentage of doctors who are killing their patients because they've been watching Nollywood movies and they want to do money rituals. Now, if we find that out, should we just ban all doctors?
It's interesting that you brought up a topic on from the big three today.
I never missed the big three.
Okay, I'm wondering if you listened to Checkpoint, where we were talking about the clamp down on drivers using ride sharing platforms.
Yes, I was.
I'm mentioning that because we were talking, we have government adding bike apps to the ban. So on the one hand, some people say government should leave these apps alone because they're solving a major problem. And on the other hand, some people are saying the apps should have followed due process, gotten full registration first before starting operation. Who do you think is correct?
Well, this is one of those in public policy, what we call the gray areas in public policy. They are both correct.
Okay.
In the sense that, on the one hand, yes, these guys who are operating these apps, these ride-hailing apps, both the operators of the platform and the drivers on the platform should have done all due diligence and made sure that they have, followed whatever rules government has had in place, submit themselves to the regulation, registration, all of that. 100% agree.
Okay.
Now, at the same time, you as government are sitting down and you're looking at the situation. You know you have the transport problem, right? You know that you're supposed to have about 20,000 or more buses on the road, but you only have less than 700. So you know that you are really not doing your job. Like, in fact, by all measures, and I'm not saying this about the particular government in power today, but we can say every government that has ruled Lagos at the state or local government level from history to now has failed in the transportation sector. If today we have a situation where instead of 20,000 or more buses, we only have 700. So you know you're dealing with that failure. You know that your citizens, Lagosians, need more transport and traffic options, right? Now, these guys, the ride-hailing apps, the bike-hailing apps are there. They are serving that purpose. They are helping you as government. They are helping you move people, right? Now, they are not stealing, they are not killing their passengers. They are not kidnapping their passengers and using them to do money ritual because they watched African Magic. They are not doing any of that. They are actually doing what they said they wanted to do, which is they are transporting them. The problem is they have not filled out the paperwork. They have not gone through the bureaucratic red tape. So they have not, as we say in public policy, they have not regularized themselves. But that is only a problem with government. So what a smart government does, you say to these people, look, come, we will find ways to regularize you, right? We will even make the situation easy for you to regularize yourself. The major reason why these people are running away from regularizing themselves is that they are being threatened with very heavy registration fees.
Okay.
And everybody runs away from paying a lot of money if they can. Now, ask yourself a second question. Remember that you're government. You are not a government right now. That's Babajide Sanwo-Olu is not governor. You are president of Halifax. You're also governor of Lagos. Now, you know that, one, like we said, you've not put enough buses on the road for your people, right? You know that it's the private sector that is helping you, that is carrying the whole load. You also know that when it comes to public transportation should be very cheap, right? As cheap as possible. You want people not to pay too much for moving around, then that money they save, they can invest it in the economy, right? Now, why should you be charging a hefty registration fee for the ride-hailing apps that are coming to help you solve the transport problem that you have failed to solve yourself? When you know that hefty fee you are charging them, in order to make that money back, they are going to have to raise the fares that they charge your citizens who you have failed to provide with transportation. That's the key question that every Lagosian should be asking themselves. These bike-hailing apps and ride-hailing apps, just like the Keke and Okada, will not exist if the government has provided the buses and trains and every other thing it was meant to provide.
Okay.
Now, government has failed to provide those things. Private people have stepped in, and government's solution is to charge them tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of naira for registration, or millions or tens of millions in the case of the company. Now, we should all ask ourselves, why and what is government using that money for?
Okay. If you just joined us, welcome. You're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili, and we're talking about the recent restrictions on two-wheeled and three-wheeled public transportation on major roads in some local government areas in Lagos. There's been a lot of reaction to this decision that started this month. Today is the 10th day since the restriction has gone into effect. Earlier today on the Big Three, you heard me talk to the organizers of Occupy Lagos. They're a group that protested against the ban at the Lagos Marathon this weekend, and we talked about a lot of issues that made me realize that we have to have a bigger conversation about transportation in Lagos itself. This is because, according to the Lagos State Ministry of Transportation, in 2016, the LAG bus system moved 29,172 Lagosians a day in a city of over 20 million people, less than 1% of the population being moved by public buses. And you compare that to a city like London with 9 million people. They've got over 500 trains carrying 6 million people per day. Did you hear that? Over 500 trains carrying 6 million people per day. They have 9 million people as the population in London, one city. One city, more than 500 trains carrying 6 million people per day. They also have almost 9,000 buses carrying 6 million people daily as well. They've got 700 bus routes. They have 19,000 bus stops. And you come home to Nigeria, where we have 20 million people. We have 674 BRT buses, 648 bus stops, and 53 bus routes. Now, those 65 buses will carry 35,000 passengers daily, right? We have one bus that is carrying 538 passengers daily. So if you want to move Lagosians, if you want to move 1 million Lagosians daily, you're going to need at least 1,858 buses. And Lagos has 674 BRT buses. The numbers are not encouraging. I have on the show with me a public policy expert who spent over a decade in policy, specifically monitoring and evaluation, before he joined the corporate world as a venture capital executive. Chief Andrew Bofero is always here talking to us about different subjects as far as policy and big data is concerned. And today we're talking transport solutions in Lagos. Chief, why do you think the government put the restriction in place before developing alternative transportation solutions? Before you answer that, let me take 3 calls. 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 01277 2993, and 01277 3993. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for calling. Good afternoon.
Yes. My name is Wisdom.
Wisdom, welcome. Go ahead.
I'm calling from Yaba now.
All right, go ahead, Wisdom.
So I want to thank your guest in the house. Is doing so much work analyzing the issues. So, but for example, Sandra, let me tell you now, I'm on the Yaba Road.
Okay.
And from Adekunle heading towards Jibo and Yaba, you can see so many people on the road. Now, usually there used to be keke that will pick you from Adekole and drop you off at probably Jibo or Yaba. But as I speak to you now, people are trekking. People are trekking seriously. So I feel like the government did not do its due diligence before implementing this ban. Because first of all, yes, we're all concerned about security issues. That is true. But the government did not manage the information they had properly. Because if you inflict so much suffering on the people, all because of a security concern, you have not solved any problem. The bike, the keke, the downfall buses, even some of the private cars, they are all security concerns. Do you know the rate of one chance on a downfall bus or some of these buses is even much more higher than what you think the bikes and the keke are doing? And if the government has implemented this in phases, they would have solved the problem. So first, you ban the bike, allow the keke to move. You can regulate the keke much more better than you can do to the local bikes. And then the app riders would have even gone a long way to even solve the issue. If there was no traffic in Lagos, the bike riders will not come here. So there will be no Gokada, there will be no Max, there will be no OPay. But because of the high rate of traffic in Lagos and people have to move around, you have these guys. And then they invest so much money in this, at the end of the day, it means that any business you want to run in Lagos now, a government of the day can wake up one day and then that your business runs to the ground. We are not telling investors well of ourselves. And that is really bad. And we will not understand the height of this issue until this security concern increases, crime increases, unemployment. And I'm not sure the government understands the suffering they've brought to many homes across Lagos.
All right, Wisdom. Thanks for calling to share your thoughts. On Facebook, Ifeanyi Yoji says, sanitize the system of buses, personnel and garages. I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to say. Ezekiel John says, the solution is very simple. Railway, water transportation, good roads. Listen, Sandra, our selfish leaders know these things, but they decide to be selfish. Godwin says, too much of going to London. Governments are just uncomfortable to blend in. They just want to turn Lagos to London overnight. Actually, Fashola transformed Oshodi a day. Let's see what's coming up. Keep it up. All right. Let's take one more call. Please keep it to 1 minute. Hello.
Good evening, Sandra.
Good evening to you, sir. What's your name?
And to your guest, good evening, too.
Welcome. Go ahead.
Okay, so a quick question I want to ask. Suppose I'm a bike owner, and that is what I use for my movement to my work, either from Yanokwaja to VI or from Ikorodu to Lekki.
It's not commercial. As long as you're not carrying partners, I think you are allowed to be on the road.
Okay, because that is not actually stated clearly.
No, it's commercial bikes. So if you're a bike owner, you have your helmet. You also can prove that you have no intentions of yes.
Commercial.
Yes, you're.
But that doesn't mean that if I can pick my wife or I can carry my colleague.
I don't know about that one. No.
So that should be stated or clarified as well by the government.
By the state government.
So that people who use this thing as their own private car don't get affected.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's number one. Then this restriction on bike and keke has had so many disadvantage for people living with disability.
I agree.
Because many of them don't have private cars. They're not economically viable to even be able to pay for all these paid taxis. So they depend on this little bike, keke to move from little places like that. For instance, the person told you can get keke from Jibowu to Sabo. But the BLT that they said they have dispensed on the road, they are not on that route.
Thanks for calling to share your thoughts. I agree with you. Let me come back to you, Chief Oboh. Why do you think the government put the restriction in place before developing alternative transportation solutions?
Because it seems to me that the developing of alternatives is just an afterthought. Because when you hear the government say 500 buses, 60 ferries by the end of the year, and you look at what's actually needed, and we're talking in the thousands of buses, we're talking in the hundreds of ferries. So when you look at that, you realize that anything that we're being told about alternatives is just an afterthought. So this situation was really not about, improving the transport system. It was also really not completely about security and safety, because if it were, we wouldn't be banning the kekes and the bike-hailing apps as well. So clearly, there is some other consideration that is not public transportation, not public safety, and not public security.
Okay.
And I don't know what that is. Your guess is as good as mine.
Chief Oboh, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Chief Oboh is a venture capital executive, but he's got serious background in public policy. He spent over a decade in policy, specifically monitoring and evaluation. Thanks for your time. We hope to have you on the show again in the future.
Always glad when you call me, Sandra.
Okay. All right, then. Thank you, Lagos, for being a part of this conversation. I wish we had more time. I wish we had an extra hour. Unfortunately, we don't, because I have to hand you over to Godwin Asuko for the news at 6. And when he's done, he'll hand you over to Rufai Useni for conversations with Rufai. Today, we have talked about transportation in Lagos. We've talked about the allegation from drivers on ride-hailing services that the government is cracking down on them. I told you that Fashola said that Nollywood movies are making Nigerians kidnap and commit ritual murder. I told you that INEC deregistered political parties. I also told you that Lagosians marched against the restrictions on bike-hailing apps, kekes and okadas. And that was how Hard Facts went today. Join me tomorrow at 3:15 when Hard Facts returns. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili online. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. That's where you can find me, Sandra Ezekwesili. 3:15 is when I'm back. Lagos, those were your Hard Facts. Good night.
We keep you informed. We keep you company. And we give you access to pour out your mind, even throughout the night. We are the first talk station of the nation. We are 99.3 Nigeria Info. Nigeria, I'm listening.